After 3 days of looting and violent protests, an uneasy calm returned to Sasolburg, Zamdela township. The cost of the residents' uncontrolled fury running into millions. As we looked deeper, it became clear that residents' anger was directed at controversial Free State Premier Magashule. And that emerged as the third problem in Zamdela: deep suspicion of political appointments to key jobs. It's another bitter ingredient in the toxic mix, which ultimately blew up into full-blown protests. Parys is Magashule's hometown. Many believe the aim of the proposed amalgamation was to uplift Parys, using Sasolburg resources.
The perception amongst the people is that the Premier also has a hand in this, because one disturbing factor is that if you look at our executive mayor, he comes from Parys. He doesn't have any ward here. You see, and that is puzzling to us as to how does he become our executive mayor when he doesn't come from, he comes from Ngwathe side. Surely he should be mayor that side. You look at the district council, the executive mayor, the municipal manager, they are both from Parys, and this is the hometown of our premier.
So when it came to light that the initial proposal to merge the municipalities emanated from the Free State provincial government, back in December 2011, the community drew a direct link to Premier Magashule.
The community believes if they can see the Premier himself, Magashule, to come and explain, give us the real fact why he wants to merge the municipalities.
Magashule, he take his own decision. He must come to us first and ask the community the thing that we want and the thing that we don't want.
But then why about Sasole e wele ka tlasa Ngwathe hona jole ntse ha hlaile ho ha e sa le ho to AC ha hlaile le ha batho ba ka ya ha bona Parys ha yo Parys o ko Bloemfontein maybe yena o dutse comfortable le family ya hae monite.
The Premier's office denies he had any involvement in the merger. But residents are openly cynical about politicians.
In other words, if you really look at it, in actual fact, we are fools, so to speak, when we say we voted for those people. Those people, they don't represent us. They represent their own parties.
It's a complaint heard around the country.
The vast majority of local governments can't account for the money they received. We see rampant corruption. We see appointments of people who can't provide services. In other words, people are appointed into quite senior positions at local government to run the financial affairs, and they can't do that. They don't have the skills. They're put there for political purposes as opposed to serve and to be able to run the programs that need running.
A key concern expressed is that the ward councillor has not been to visit that community since being elected. I think the issue there is really around political careers. Ward councillors are looking forwards and upwards towards other avenues of engagement rather than relating to the community and seeing themselves as representatives of that community.
And that trend is common to many protests around the country. Let's go back again. In Zamdela, some local leaders are seen as political appointments who are perceived to have no vested interest in the communities they run. Residents believe these leaders have only been placed there because of their loyalty to President Jacob Zuma. Municipal IQ is an independent monitor of service delivery. Countrywide, the increasing disconnect between government and communities is fueling an alarming increase in protests.
Last year we saw 173 protests, major service delivery protests against local government. The highest peak before that was 111 a few years ago. So it's considerably higher, it's almost 50% above the pre-existing peak. The biggest worry about that was we saw a larger portion of protests, over 3/4 of these protests being violent, which is higher than of previous years.
When the Minister of Police presented the police crime statistics in Parliament during September last year, statistics were then showed almost 20%, bigger than a 20% increase in violent public protests that the police had to respond to in 2012 as compared to the previous year. So that worked out to about, on average, 3 violent public protests every day in South Africa.
And that brings us to problem number 4, inadequate policing. For days, Zamdela police could not stop the hordes of protesters from looting. Even at the cash build located right across the road from the station, police couldn't act. Alarm bells are ringing, according to the Institute for Security Studies. The increase in violent protests is putting added strain on police resources.
We have fewer police officials who are going after hardened criminals who are committing murders, rapes, robberies, because those police officials have to go and now deal with angry communities who are protesting because of breakdown in service delivery. So it's averting resources away from their core duty, which is to fight crime.
The police are also ill-equipped to deal with public violence. There is no longer a specialized unit for this.
Up until about 2006, we had quite large numbers of well-trained, relatively well-equipped police officials, and then there was a very ill-conceived restructuring process that was led by the former police chief Jackie Selebi, in which he shut down specialized units, and one of the units that was badly affected was public order policing, and they lost about half their members who were sent to other stations and stopped doing this kind of work.
Worryingly, police inadequacy is a common factor in many violent protests. Let's go back. In Zamdela, police were initially unable to deal with looters. They were not trained to do so. The tactical response team was later called in, even though their mandate is to deal with high-risk crimes like cash and transit robberies, because the public order policing unit is no more. Coming up, the toll that protest action takes on South Africa's international reputation.